Awesome, so we are busy sanding the front spoiler lip thing here, and on a nice rainy day, I just got a pleasant surprise. Oh boy! Oh yeah, I'm going to show you the wheels that are going on this little beast. These are the wheels and tyres that are going onto the KE55. Oh, look at that. Isn't that just a thing of beauty? Oh yeah. Man, these are actually really fat. Like, wow, they're really cool. Man, I can't wait to see them on the car. I actually wasn't expecting there to be white writing on the tyres themselves. I just asked for some cheap tyres to go with the wheels. I wasn't overly fussed about the tyres at this point in time. But that's really cool how they're white writing on them. That's pretty sweet. It's going to look really, really mad. But the wheels, my goodness. Look at that. So these wheels are a Avid one, it's the brand, and AV12 is the model. They come in a bunch of different color options. I went with the black center and bronze rim. I think that's going to match really nicely with the gunmetal grey that's going on the car. And the tyres size that I went with is the 195 by 50 R15s. These are 15-inch rims. And you can see it's only got the smallest amount of stretch, which is what I'm going for. I don't want massive stretch, and I didn't want it to be kind of, coming out at the top. I do have to have these fit underneath some guards, so a tiniest amount of stretch will help a lot. That is one fat wheel. So to help these poke out only a tiniest amount more to make room, or so they fit under the wheel guards, I will be using a converter which is 114.3 to 4x100. And that'll work as a bit of a spacer as well. They bolt onto the original hub, and then you can put your 4x100s on top of that. Those spacers haven't arrived yet, but that's absolutely fine. I'm over the moon with these. They look better in person, which is really, really cool. These are a copy of, I can't remember the brand tyre, maybe CCWs or something. I don't know the name, but I'm not overly fussed. They cost me, shipped, landed with insurance, including the nuts and the center rings, under $1,000. So I think it was like $990 to get these landed here for all four, which I think is a really, really, really good price. It is only a Corolla at the end of the day. I could have bought some proper brand wheels and spent $4,000 on a set of maybe Ray's TE37Vs or something, which I really wanted, but for nearly 4,000 Australian dollars, not including tyres, I don't think putting that value of wheels on a cheap car is really the smart thing to do. So I'm happy using the rep wheels for now. I think they're going to look sick. Hopefully the tyres are half alright in the wet. This is not a powerhouse car. It's got like, 40 kilowatt? It's not like I'm going to be doing donuts. I don't need a ton of grip. I just kind of hope that they're okay in the wet. That's it. But anyways, these things look sick. With the wheels in their resting place until they're ready to go on the car, we are continuing on with some body work. The front spoiler here, or splitter, whatever you want to call it, has been sanded right back and is in etch primer. The whole body of the whole car, I've taken care of this dent here, which wasn't too difficult. Everything else has got a layer of primer on it, thank goodness. It's all been sanded down with 80 grit, and I've started to patch any areas with a little bit of body filler, just to take care of any kind of slight dents. So now we're at the stage where we need to sand these back down and make them nice and flat. For this process, I'm going to be using 120 grit sandpaper on a big flat sanding pad to get this nice and flat with the body panels of the car. The sills underneath are all done and all straight now thanks to that body dent puller that I bought off eBay. So now we need to just keep sanding. Sanding those little Bondo spots, getting them ready for the next step. And after I finish doing the sanding, we'll be able to give the whole car a coat in filler primer again to get it ready for sanding again, because sanding never ends when you're doing these. So let's get at it. Alright, so what we have left with here is, you can see the original white paint that was on the car. I sanded this down with 80 grit initially, then I put on my roller primer, and then on top of that I did my Bondo work. So you can see all these little scratches here, they're dead flat. They're now grey, so they've been filled in with the primer filler. So putting a primer filler over 40 scratches, probably not the best idea. Should be maybe minimum of 80 grit scratches would be best, but it still works quite fine. I've been using 120 grit to get this down. So now all of this area has been sanded with 120 grit and it's now really flat and flush with the panel of the car. Apart from one little low spot right there, which I can fix just by putting another little tiny smear of body filler on. But this main part's been done. I now have to do all the rest. Yeehaw. Well, 2.5 hours later, we've done the, I guess, block sanding. Any areas that had a little bit of body filler on them that need to be sanded back are all now, they're all now flush with the car and everything's nice and straight, which is really good. Now the next step is to sand the whole thing down with 80 grit on a DA. Because I've already done the shaping with the 120 grit on the big flat sander pad thing, I can now go over the whole car with 80 grit. And what I'm doing with the 80 grit is getting it ready for another few layers of filler primer. So the next few layers of filler primer will go on top, and then I can start using my finer grit sandpapers to get that layer ready for paint. So let's get the DA sander out and I'll see you when I've finished the next step. Even though DA sander is faster than by hand, I think this is still going to take a good solid hour to 2 hours of sanding, so I'll see ya in a second.
So now that's done, we can start cleaning up all the sand from the dust, get that sand out of the door. All this nice and smooth. And once all that's out, we get the primer, start rolling it on, and we'll be good to go. Done that? Yep, that's all. Alright, let me remove
my mask. Whew. Man, so important to wear a mask when you're doing this kind of stuff. It's crazily dusty. Oh boy. Like I was saying, all the dust is now blown off. The shed's about 10% cleaner, which will be enough for me to get the roll-on primer filler back on top of all this sanded surface. I sanded it with a DA 80 grit so that it would give enough bite for the primer surfacer to kind of bond onto the surface that I've just sanded. So now we have to roll on a bunch of paint. And then after that, we need to sand it all back down again. So we've done all of the actual shaping for the car. All this is now really nice and flat. Any little areas that needed work have now been worked. We're now putting a nice thick layer of primer surfacer on so that we can fill up any little tiny sand scratches, and it will also give us a nice substrate for us to sand down with 400 grit and then follow up with 800 grit. So it's time to pull out the roller again and start rolling a few coats of surfacer primer onto every single panel. Let's go. So there we go. Over 2 litres, I think nearly 3 litres of surfacer primer filler, rolled on. That took quite a while to do, but now we've got a really nice good substrate to work with to sand down with our 400 and then 800 sandpaper so that the surface is ready for paint. So I'm going to let this dry for a good solid 2 days, maybe even longer. I want this to dry and shrink as much as possible so no scratches come back through and are visible in the future. If I sand this today or tomorrow while it's still drying for the next few days, it's going to shrink into the scratches and I'll end up seeing them again, so we don't want that to happen. It's been a big job. Thanks for watching. I'm stuffed, I'm tired. Probably said the same thing 5 times in a row, but tripping over myself. It's a pretty good method using the roll-on stuff. It makes a mess, but I'm done with this roller, so that's going to go in the bin. Well, the roller piece anyway. I've got more of them over there. Yeah, if you want to give it a go, more than welcome. I'm no professional painter by any means, but this is just what I've learnt to work best for me. If I had to spray all of this primer on, or surfacer primer filler on, it would have made a big mess and I wouldn't have got as much product onto the panels. So I'm happy using the roll-on technique. Obviously, I'll be using a spray gun for the base color and the paint, but and the clear. But you know, for primer filler and for building up the surface so you can sand it back, the roll-on stuff works really well. Just give it a good solid 2 or 3 days to dry before you start sanding it again, that's all. You want it to be dead flat and to be all sunk and dried and cured and all that fun stuff. Anyway, that's me done. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.